2 years, you said?
Yeah, he died about 2 years back or so. Just died very, very quickly.
What's that?
I hope I don't stumble too much.
Nah, man, you can.
No,
can
man,
actually,
you're seasoned, man.
if you feel.
Good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you are. Different time zones, so we have to greet you differently. It's morning in the UK, so it'll be good morning. This is the GILDARIE Freddie Kissoon show. We are an interview program, also a chat show, and we do a version of people calling in to give us their views, viewpoint, complaints about any and everything in Guyana. This program comes to you 3 times a week at 8:30 p.m. in the evening, and it's a live program. You can get us on Guyanese Critic Facebook page. If you have your smartphone, you tune into TBN Guyana, and we're also on YouTube. Thanks for your patronage the past 9 months. With me this evening is our usual co-host, Leonard GILDARIE. I usually refer to him on this program as the evergreen journalist. We have an interesting guest this evening, and when I hand over to GILDARIE for his little, well, what should I say, his little comments or observations about things he sees, I am going to go into details about my guest, except to say that I have been married for 44 years, more than 44 years. February is 44. And he knew me separately from my wife before we ever dreamt to get married. So we'll talk about our guest who straddles 3 dimensions of life in one's life. But before that, let me hand you over to Leonard GILDARIE. When he's introducing this program, he normally talks about some things that bother him. I guess you will know, if you're looking at the program, that he said a snake attacked him in his car outside the National Culture Center. And he came out of the car, shouted in passing cars, and no car stopped. And I thought that was very, very uncouth of people. But then I remember, you can stop if you're a big person and go to a car to stop a fight inside a car. But how many people would stop and go to take a snake out of a car? I remember when I was small, a snake got away in the gardens. A guy tried to capture it, and it ate him up. Then last week, GILDARIE fell into a gutter and hurt his knee. I think he's wearing a knee guard. So I'm going to hand you over to him to find out what is new with him. I hope he didn't get robbed outside the bank because he's a businessman. But over to Leonard GILDARIE, and then we'll come back to a man who has known me and my wife separately more than 50 years. But Leonard GILDARIE.
Thank you very much, dear Freddie. Good night, folks, wherever you are. Good morning. It's always a pleasure. The lawyers in the room would probably ask what's the context or what's the relevance, and I'm not sure what snake has to do with our guest at the moment, but it is what it is. Yes, Freddie, I did had a incident last week. We were doing some work on the road, I think, by the Harbour Bridge here, and I tried to step across the drain. Probably would have been just a simple matter, and somehow I ended up in the drain. Everything went down in the drain. I took the brunt of it, on the knee, and the doctors, after I did the X-ray, they said that it was trauma down there. So like every week something is happening. I guess as you get older, that's things that you have to deal with. The week before, my kid was just coming out of school and walking, and a little young bandit decided to hold them up, and we were trying to track them down. So these are things that you have to deal with as you go through life. There are going to be incidents and accidents and all kinds of things. But Freddie, something came to my attention as usual, and I pay very close attention to things that can have an impact on our country. Whether it's speeding on the road, and people say, but why is that important? It shows the kind of culture that we have and the kind of attitude that we have. And I believe these are things could impact our progress as we go forward in this country, and going forward we are. I was paying attention to the problems that the Silicon Valley Bank had, and the run, and the government of America had to step in to rescue that bank to ensure that there's not a ripple effect that would cause a collapse of the finance system in America. But it wasn't only connected to America, but to England. But I became fearful because after reading that, I remember 2008, 2009, when we had that major economic problem across the world. Ripple effect, it wasn't. That was a tsunami, and the housing market crashed, and a couple people ended up in jail because of what was happening with real estate and fraud and scam and so on. But I'm fearful that the progress that we make it forward, something as simple as this. Well, it's not simple by the way that America looked at it, but it could have a big impact. We have to pay attention to these outside happenings, even the war in Russia and between Russia and Ukraine. We have to pay attention to that because it had an impact on our cost of goods imports and so on. I saw the ICC, the World Court, is now contemplating to put charges on officials within Russia. I saw the news not too long ago for war crimes, and that is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But let me stop here and allow you to introduce our very interesting guest. I have some questions for him, but over to you, Freddie.
Right. Thank you, Leonard. I was 20 years old. Well, I could imagine that. I'm a dinosaur now, so you can imagine how long ago was that. I was 20 years old, and I was at the Bishop's High School to hear a symposium on Pan-Africanism. And our guest got into a furious encounter with then another well-known Guyanese icon from that area, Moses Bagwan. And that issue was on Pan-Africanism. So I would say our guest is one of the longest Pan-African activists, definitely in the Caribbean and in the Third World. I can't say in the world because I don't know if there are other long-serving Pan-Africanists in the African American community. But that goes to show how long he has been in Pan-Africanism. But he straddles more than Pan-Africanism. Our guest this evening is chemical engineer, political activist, businessman, and Pan-African activist, RAS Tom Dalgety. Tom, I don't think I can call you RAS Tom because I've been calling you Tom since I was 20 years old.
That's true.
But welcome to the program.
Thanks.
And welcome to Leonard GILDARIE.
Thank you.
RAS Tom Dalgety will tell you about his life, because when I knew him 50 years ago, at that time he was making lots of money. So at that time he became wealthy, because I remember in Ben Street, he put up a friend of mine who had nowhere to go, I think because of the political activities, Brian Rodway, in Ben Street. And in that same house, he was making potty. He made a name for himself manufacturing potty and sodium silicate in the 70s, selling it to a wide variety of manufacturing companies. I suspect he will tell us that is where Tom got his money from. But Tom has been involved in chemical production, scientific research for a very long time. He is an enduring Pan-Africanist, and he had 5 years of service in the bauxite industry. I will now show you some of the booklets he produced. They may be small booklets, but they're very, very interesting. Green Gold. Alternative Materials, Knowledge Management and Wealth. And the photograph is a young Tom Dalgety when he was at school.
I was at Queen's at the time, yes.
Gold, place of mining in the Guyana environment. Mining policies in Guyana changing the hinterland. Now, RAS Tom Dalgety, as the word RAS, you would know he belongs to the Rastafarian culture. Now, I have been told years ago when I'm speaking about Rastafarianism, say Rastafari culture, not Rastafarianism. Guidelines and Chants of the Rastafari by Tom Dalgety. Sacred Speeches on Africa. So, with that introduction, we will let the man speak of his life, and then we will talk about some of his controversial views. I know that he was, when I was a young man, young boy, 18, 20 in the WPA, he was very sympathetic to the WPA. I think he has some harsh views on Walter Rodney now, which, as the discussion moves on, I may disagree with, or Gildarie may disagree with. But RAS Tom Dalgety, tell us about all these things I've just introduced about. What were you doing in the bauxite industry? Did you make a lot of money selling sodium silicate, which you manufactured? I know you have lots of land.
Not now.
When you sold them?
Some of that, yes.
When you sold those lands?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, what was life journey, Tom?
Well, as usual, I was born in Amsterdam, but we came out of Berbice, and I still love Berbice, the villages of Norley and Kildonan, okay? But then I toured most of Guyana. My father was a policeman. We went from place to place. So I went to school in Essequibo. I went to school in Demerara. And Berbice, okay? I went to Sunday school in Berbice. I remember when my mother allowed me to go to Sunday school for the first time, all by myself, okay? And then when we lived for a while at Cove and John, my mother and father came to see the headmaster, and I thought something had gone wrong. Maybe I'll get licks. And when I went home, I heard they said that I must do something with this boy, you know, because I was already in 6th standard, sort of. And there's no point keeping me at 8 years old, nearly 10, okay, in 6th standard, because they do school leaving examinations, you know, which is about 15, 16. So they do something with this boy. Then the next comment I heard was Brother Giddings, who was at St. Stephen's School at the time, say, send the boy to me, which means it's wild kid, and you can be to pass the scholarship examination of those years. And so I went there, and at school I saw Professor Ewart Thomas mentioned recently at the funeral of Professor Godfrey Rollier, how he was boasting to Rollier about how in school they had to learn 12 timetables up to 12. He said, "Boy, I had to learn up to 19 times." When I came to Georgetown to school, you had to learn from 13 times to 19 times table. And one day, when everybody was getting licks, or not everybody, but many little students, boys and girls, at St. Stephen's, okay, the headmaster turned to me and says, "You, get up, 16 times table," and I began to recite 16-1, 16, 16-2, 32, and right up to 19 times. And he said to the rest of the scholarship class, "Bright boy, he will go to Queen's College." And I ended up at Queen's. I remember that incident, and I tell people that story. I thought I was lucky, in fact, that because 16 times, I think the only table I knew. 13 and 19.
You scam them.
Indeed. So that's the beginning of a life that I enjoyed. Frankly speaking, I played games. I did athletics and football at Queen's, and also spent some time in the laboratory. Laboratories were very nice in those days. I remember a teacher teaching chemistry would begin his class and say, chemistry is very easy. The alphabet, there are 27 letters in the alphabet. And out of that, you make millions and millions of words. Same thing. They have 100 or so elements. Out of that, you make plenty compounds. And it says how easy it is to be a chemist. So that sort of thing. I went off to university as usual, came back home, taught a while at the GTI, then I went in the bauxite industry. That was my second alma mater, bauxite. In bauxite, I was there as quality control chemist, right? And quality control is a before and after thing. You get something at 10% silica, and you have a contract to supply it with let's say 5%, and you wash out the silica and you sell it. You dry it and sell it, okay? And you dry it and calcine it. Now, calcine is like what we used to do in secondary school, loss and ignition. You get some things, you put it in a crucible, you put it on over a Bunsen burner, you drive off the water of crystallization, bang, you go right up again and get marks for it. Simple. And then after bauxite, I went into over the alumina plant. Again, there's concerned a simple reaction between bauxite and caustic soda, right? I paused a little bit because when I was there, some of my workers used to make soap. I always think soap is a dolly thing. You take any fat, pig fat, coconut oil, or oil, vegetable oil, wrap it with caustic soda and you make soap. We used to do that at school. It's a school thing. Therefore, for me, I never wanted to make soap because it's like, for me, a dolly house thing, and little girls just make soap, that sort of thing. So the bauxite industry, alumina plant, okay. And then after alumina plant, I went in over at research and development with Sam Hines and Roshan Habibullah and that sort of crowd, like Black Moses, Humphrey is his name. And we were in R&D. I did Malite in that time and a couple of other things, okay. But by that time, for me, the bauxite industry was beginning to collapse. Now, when I went to bauxite, I thought I will never come back to Georgetown. I thought we were going to burst open the interior, this potential we have. And to see that we have 4 raw materials, bauxite, kaolin, which is called China clay, okay, or just call it fire clay, sand, okay, and clay, ball clay, and we're not doing anything with it, we just stick it in bauxite. Not only me, but many others of my time would say that you need to broaden the base. You can't just sell bauxite. The day the white man stopped buying bauxite, it's gone dead. Therefore, we should begin to think of these other raw materials or these minerals, these industrial minerals. They are special minerals to me. They are the minerals that build big industries. It's the minerals of the Industrial Revolution. When the Chinese began, they called it the development minerals. Okay? And we have these 4 minerals that you drive to work every day and you see them in your face. And we're not doing anything with them. So by this time, I was getting a little fed up. Many of my colleagues were leaving for greener pastures, they claim, America and back into Europe. But I decided I want to stay home. I can stay home. If I fail, I go like anybody else. I have a problem with that, If I fail, I go. And so I think, but the first thing I did was, in fact, to do what I call potter's clay. Because we used to, I think we might still do, import clay in this country. We import mud, we import clay. In fact, they're importing bricks right now from Trinidad.
Yeah.
Yes, you know what I mean?
Guyana importing bricks from Trinidad?
Yes.
Trinidad, 1,998 square miles?
Yes, we import bricks from Trinidad right now. I'm telling you. This is folly of it all, okay? And so what happens here is that I decided that, and I got hooked on what I call the industrial minerals, right? So I got some clay, okay? In fact, the first bit of clay came from just over Wisma, where when the river drops, there's a layer of clay, beautiful ball clay, let's call it, right? And what you do just like the bauxite industry, you take the clay, you dig it out, you wash it, you get a gasoline drum, a plunger, you wash it, the sand falls out to the bottom, the clay is in suspension, and you decant the clay, put it I had a wire mesh, okay, with some newspaper, and use it newspaper like filter paper, and the water goes through and leaves the clay on top. You dry it in the sun, grind it up, put it in a parcel, and sell it. So I sold the clay to some potters. There was great Gay Craft and Gay Craft and Lama Craft at the time. So I sold clay to potters. By this time, the Ministry of the nursery section of the Ministry of Education had heard about me, and they, Agnes Jones and this other girl was a deputy, they had heard about it, and they know about clay because they live in Europe and them places and know about it. They ordered some clay for me, and I put it in plastic bags and sold
How much
it.
money you made? A lot of money?
But not the money at the very beginning. I didn't make money at the very beginning. Now I'll tell you something about this matter of making money, okay? When I began to make the clay and I sold it to the potters, there was a woman named Mrs. Kibble. She was the wife of one of the deputies at ambassadors, United States ambassadors to Ghana, Mrs. Kibble. And when I left the bauxite industry, she said to me, Tom, it's a brave decision. He says there's something called the 80-20 rule, right? Of those people who start business, 80% fail and only 20% survive, okay? But those, to survive, you have to hold on for about 3 years, about three to 4 years. If you could make it through to 3 to 4 years, you're gonna make it. Therefore, the back of my mind, I ain't giving up until after 3 years,
Right.
you know? And that, in fact, so I punished those first 3 years, you know, making clay, doing this. Bauxite came up, but I can also tell you a story about that particular year because this is a little about me. Let me see. Like 2 weekends, I couldn't pay wages. Okay, I didn't want to put it family because a lot of people didn't like the idea that I had gone into business. They thought I should get a job. You know, I will come to Rastafari just now on the matter of jobs. Okay. I wanted that they think I should have gone abroad. Why I shouldn't have resigned from the bauxite industry, even get a good job and that sort of thing. But I didn't want to stay, right? And I really want to come into the Rastafari thing now, because I used to go to church with my auntie at St. Andrew's Church. We're Presbyterians, okay? But I found that like something was holding me back. There's some, you know, you're striving hard, and so on, and something was holding me back. And so I began to drift. It wasn't an epiphany, a drift. And I found when I drifted into Naibingi, because I also messed around a little bit with 12 tribes, and I also messed around a little bit with so-called black Muslims, okay? They had a place in Rob Street, a masjid or whatever it is in Rob Street, Brother Shakir.
What do you call it?
It's a masjid.
Masjid.
Okay. And but I found when I kept going with the Nyabingi, I didn't see the Nyabingi drums. But what happened? Rastafari moved me. I moved the Godhead from Europe and put the Godhead in Africa and said Hail Selassie. And like that gave me some daring and began to be bold. And Rastafari made me bold.
So you saying that your success in business came from this gravitation to that was like a calling.
Yes.
So you see a connection with your personal success in business and the calling of Rastafari.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
I remember, and let me tell you before we come into the thing, because this is interesting. You during our talks before the show started, I learned so many things, and I said, wow, we do happen to have Guyanese in our midst here. People, we could have different political views, but that doesn't stop us. In America, we could celebrate the things that our people do, the contributions that they make to the country. I remember in the 90s, and I can remember in the 90s, that there was a Channel 9, there wasn't internet at that point in time. So you used to have to go up to your roof and fix the antenna. And Channel 9 was one of them, Channel 65, Channel 6, and so on. And on Channel 9, Dalgety, Africa, I think it was. And so I looked at that, and I thought it was interesting. I understand that there was some huge following there. But I didn't like it too much because the quality, because we weren't catching Channel 9 do it pretty well. But I understand that you introduced that, right? So, Freddie, what is interesting here? Because we have spoken to people who would have had at various points in time in our life had an impact on us. Boredom at one point in time, Desmond Hoyt at another time, Shelly Jagan and so on. In the sugar estates and so you would have had those kind of people. But Dalgety's here was something who would bring in African movies into the country. How did that happen?
Well, after he answered that, I can tell you, I know him making putty and sodium silicate. Dalgety had a building in Wortmanville making putty, and it was not a small venture. Dalgety was selling putty commercially all over this country. I think he's modest, and it may be embarrassing, and we should keep away from asking him about his wealth. But I know in the 70s that putty business was big.
I don't agree with you there, Freddie, for the simple reason, look, who makes putty in there if you're a single man? Who does that? I mean, who and he says about the sodium silicate there.
He was selling
who does those things? And then when
he did it,
I know, but I'm learning about these things.
Did it,
and I said, wow.
I'm telling you that when I knew him at the time,
back to that thing there. Who introduces African movies to a channel at a point in time? Everybody was interested in America and Hollywood and so on. What motivated you to do that?
Well, actually, because you see, I had gone. I studied in England or in Europe or in Scotland, okay, and I used to go up, and I was realizing that in fact there were African movies. People used to go to the library and borrow African movies and go home and look at the ticket back to the library. And because Guyana never had African movies, I thought, well, by Christ, there are Indian movies, there are European movies, there's thing movies. In fact, when I brought it in and took it to Metropole Cinema, the guy told me, said people only like kung fu thing. They wouldn't like this. I said, why not? I don't see why African people wouldn't like African movies. So in fact, what I used to do is to put it in my suitcase. And I came back and came home from London from holiday, okay? And I tried to get it on. Eventually, I got Channel 9 took it when nearly everybody had reached
That's interesting. And still playing there all the years. And you've been producing that, giving it to that channel. But I find that very interesting because it had an impact on me.
I want to go on it. I want to go on it. I will come up with a potty because that was the era in the 70s when you were reigning. Because I know personally about the potty business in Ben Street. And Brian Rodway, your friend and my friend, you put him up at the house there. But I want to talk about Itpadaji. In my opening statement, I said, when I was 20, I remember that incident in Bishop High School, in which it was a Pan-African symposium. The United Nations Decade of the People of African Descent. Why are you not, Tom, I could think of only two persons in this country that have decades and decades of experience in global activism of Pan-Africanism. Gerald Pereira, who's a leader of a political party called Organization of Victory of the People in his going on in his mid-60s. And of course, there is you, much older than Gerald. Why, if you have the United Nations Declaration of the People of African Descent, why are you not the head of that? Which Pan-Africanist?
No, I would like to get into that sort of question.
Please do.
No. Because Vincent is it. But what happened is for a year before that was created, let us say, okay, we used to meet at Crucial Labor College and speak about matters concerning Africa and so on. And then Vincent did something that I'm a little upset about it, because when he asked the guy to write the document, what's his name again? I can't remember now. Okay. He left out Africa completely. And in fact, it upset a lot of things. In fact, I think that's one of the underlying reasons why they've got into recent controversy over collecting money, a subvention from the government, and has done nothing except fly off to Geneva or someplace like that and fly to send reports to the UN and other things that I really wish not to happen. But because, for example, take one thing that has upset me. I was head of a committee called the Equity Committee, right? Equity Committee. You could check it out. The difference between equity and equality, right? And we had made some propositions to them. For example, training of contractors. We wanted to move people from African people who are subcontractors to the level big time contractors. That was not done. We wanted to, me and this question of roads and so on, we went up to Number 30 village once and we found a 14-year-old boy who was looking after his kitchen garden. His mother said this was his, she wasn't a part of it, just the mother. But when you look at where they lived and where the road is, okay, if rainy season comes, it's potter. So I said, listen, we should be able to do some clay bricks, right? I fought with them until today, frankly speaking, to get us to make some clay bricks. Now, if you go up the quarantine, right? And in fact, in West Coast when I was a boy, okay? You know Burnt Earth? Mm-hmm. Burnt Earth roads. They used to have red roads. You must remember those things, you know? They make burnt earth. But all you have to do is put it in the mold. You go to Rupununi and you see the same thing, eh? But to get them to finance or to do something like that.
But I have always known you to be, Tom Dalgety, I have always known you to be an aggressive person who speak your mind. Mm-hmm. I may not agree with your political views, but you've always put your political views on the table. How you manage then, not how you manage to sideline yourself or to get sidelined in an area of life, African culture, African achievements, in Guyana when you should have been there, the experience, I mean, look the books, look the things in Africa, Pan-Africanism from within, written by
Pat Moore's book.
Why you didn't stay in Ipadaji and fight as one of the more known African voices in Guyana?
Difficult. And then they changed the organization to company and whatnot, I think, just to hold on to positions and they want to.
Why you didn't fight that?
Look, there are things to be done in life that you can't waste your time with doing. And I'm basically into science and technology, right? And I want to be, I'm more excited about that.
I want to ask you then, Tom, and I think I can call you Tom.
Yes,
call you Tom too.
You may not, Brother Dalgety, Brother RAS.
Yeah. Everything is context in this country, and we are at a time where we have to take stock of who we are, where we want to go as a people. We cannot lose this opportunity. We'd be very stupid to do that. But I always believe, me as a Guyanese, that we cannot go forward. The blacks or the Afro-Guyanese cannot work without the Indo-Guyanese.
Because
we have to be one. And I when I listen to Ipadaji and Afro-Guyanese and all the different organizations which is back in their own, maybe it's a good thing to push, the culture within that. But when you push a political ideology, I have a severe problem because most of these things, they lose the values and the objectives of what they're supposed to be doing because in the pursuit of the political side of things.
Because of selfishness also, the produce of, one of the greatest desires of most Africans who live in the diaspora is to link with Africa.
You're intelligent Guyanese who've been around, and I'm surprised that when you told me that you were 83. I want to ask you directly, sir, whether you believe that our Afro-Guyanese leaders, and most of them we could talk about the political leaders, and maybe you would want to comment at the same time with the 2020 elections, whether we fail our people, whether we fail to say, look, here are opportunities, and you look at the Ipadaji, which is supposed to be a door that is supposed to be open there to lead the people. Have we failed our Afro-Guyanese brothers?
I think badly. Yes, we have. I mean,
Is it the political leaders alone, or there should have been any
the,
NGOs and
yes,
so on?
yes, the NGOs should have been part of it. I mean, we have no business links with Africa. And one of the things that I, for example, have commented in that very first book on thing is the fact that this is where to get in. Check, for example, when Jagan came to power in 57, okay, they brought in Tani and Korpalani that mentored Indian businessmen. The Chinese invented the word, I shouldn't say invented the word, called compradors. You know the word comprador? They talk of these compradors, okay?
I didn't know the Chinese invented it.
Yes, I think it is. I think it comes from Portugal, but I think it's mostly tongue began to use it. These compradors that don't that making money, but they're that nationalistic, if you understand what I mean, you know? But we never, and I think Ipadachi, as one of its focuses, you know, should try. I mean, it hasn't gone completely gone as yet, you know, to have links with Africa. And this, I think, is one of the major problems that people are very sour about them. Okay? I think most people. I belong to the Pan-African movement and also the Congress of Guyanese African Tribalists. Oh, yes, remember that thing? Joe McGrath? I don't know how it came to my head, though.
But my question, Freddie, and you got to bear with me, maybe you could answer too, right?
Yeah.
I'm a young guy and that is not so steeped in history as the two of you guys. How is that relevant to the people who really want to get up in life? And maybe you could guide me here. The normal Joe in the street, the normal Guyanese, whether you're Chinese, Amerindian, Indo-Guyanese, Afro-Guyanese, they want to get up, they want to have wealth, they want to have a house, a car. Are these organizations relevant? Where should we go from here? What is it that if you had an opportunity to say to Ipadaji and all the other organizations, what can you say to them to say to build our country? Because I got a problem in that everybody's speaking, everybody wants to represent their own, but nobody is talking about where this country is going.
You know, it makes me remember a phrase that has been with me for 30 years. I picked it up in the boxer when I was in the boxer industry. It came from the Indian Science Review, Science Policy. Shouldn't say Science Review. Science Policy, one of the first science policies after independence in India. Okay, and it said the prosperity of a nation, apart from the spirit of the people, depends on technology, raw materials, and capital, right? You see this thing called the spirit of the people? That is the thing, right? It's like when I mentioned to you when the shifting of the Godhead from Europe and put it in Africa, that made me bolder and more daring. Made me feel like, oh, I'm capable of making sodium silicate. I'm capable of making putty. I'm this, you know? And so the prosperity, first is the spirit, and second is technology.
Tom,
right? I don't know
is there any hope of reconciliation? This long-standing Pan-Africanists that have went all over the world, you look your stuff on, and plus your business acumen. Tom, nobody in Ipadaji can tell me about the business success of Tom Dalgety. I've known Tom Dalgety more than 50 years. Is there any hope of reconciliation and you could go back in Ipadaji and help steer the ship?
You know, you're making me remember some quotations. Now, you know, Obama wrote a book called The Audacity of Hope. There's hope, you know, for hope, like people who are audacious and so on and so forth, you know. But I don't know if that helps to answer your question about if there's hope.
Well, I want to, coming back to the hope along that way, you, like many Guyanese, would have paid attention to that 2020 elections. And we would have seen what played out. The whole world, the entire Caribbean, all the leaders and everybody, 4 or 5 diplomats walking out of Ashman's building. I think that's probably one of the lowest moments in our country's history. What are your thoughts as a Guyanese, a Guyanese who believe in the spirit of this country? what were your thoughts of the leaders and the conclusions that the entire world made conclusions as to who were the culprits, who were the scams, who were the thieves? Your thoughts, Tom?
You often those sorts of questions that let me say something that I know the Rastafari community was very upset about. Okay, who the scams, who the thieves, and Rastafari voted in that elections, the 2015 elections. Okay, and they expected a lot of important things, including their marijuana thing. But I don't smoke, and so, but I support it. Okay, and you see that act that Granger did of going and bow before the Queen. After that, Rasta said, "I'm voting for you any longer." Done with that. And you're asking me a question to do with, you mentioned peace and whatnot, which I don't want to get into really, but the elections, I think it were very close elections, but I thought that most African people were very, very, very disappointed in APNU. Very, very disappointed, and the leadership.
But Tom, I mean, disappointment. I know you choose your word carefully. Tom, I was the only Indian when a few months ago last year, when the marijuana bill was being amended, right? So you don't have to mandatory jail sentence, and those Rastafari brethren were out there. There was no support from the African leadership there. I was the only Indian. I was the only man from the 70s, right? Who grounded with black people who were outside there. Tom, I shared a platform with Basil Williams in a village on the East Coast called Paradise during the 2015 election. And on that platform, the promise was made to amend the you getting people locked up for 2 grams. I know a guy named Kiefer. I went to court for him. 2 grams, and that boy slept Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, and went to court Monday night. And Tom, up to this day, they have not even said, when we made a manifesto promise, we're sorry. I mean, people are still being locked up for 4 or 5 grams.
I know. I did a protest outside the Partichong Center a few months ago, on that same matter. Therefore, I support the Rastafari on that matter. I joined the protest, physically went out with a placard on the road and do that. You see, the thing is, in this country, I think we depend too much on one man. You understand, one man is that we're not led by ideas. We're led mostly by the so-called people. And Granger being Granger, okay, as I said, he had his bow. Granger also, he's been with the Anglican Church, and I suspect that he's more want to promote this ancient
tradition, culture.
A religion that I can't take on any longer. You see, and he's a staunch Anglican. And Olias night, instead of coming and addressing the people, he goes to church. Okay, I mean, I imagine my sister, so I'm glad that he's gone to church.
Do you see in the current crop, Mr. Dalgety, the current crop of politicians that we have here, anybody or is there existing in the opposition, which is largely where the Afro-Guyanese support, any leaders that are there who could or who has the ability or the potential or you believe has the means to meet the needs of the Afro-Guyanese?
It's difficult, that's not a question to answer.
Do you have anybody that you like in the opposition right now that you believe could take this country?
I think in fact the PNC has elected this boy
Norton.
And I think you should give him a chance, okay? Because he's just recently elected. There's a project that I'm involved in right now, okay? And he supported it. He supports it. And that is, for example, they're doing a landfill in Congress Place. Okay, now that place has been deteriorating for a long time. I think they got snakes in the place and they got alligator here, you know, and Ali had because I also made some concrete blocks. Okay, they said there's a machine there, and I could have a look at it. But when you go there underwater, and so I suggested to do some landfill, and he supports that idea. I say an idea because it is an idea. Okay. So I think he should be given a chance. I don't see anybody else at the moment because Harman and Granger were there for many years, at least 4 or 5 years, and they didn't inspire. They're not leading with ideas. You see, Burnham was different. Burnham led with ideas. Burnham led with 4 different, with self-reliance, cooperatives, non-caste society, and about 4 or 5 ideas.
I'm glad that you raised Burnham.
No, because, and you don't find, we haven't had a leader since Burnham's time who led with ideas. And I'm waiting also to see how Norton kicks
Tom
off.
Chetty didn't lead with ideas.
Chetty led with ideas, yes, but you know, I had a problem with the Chetty leadership in the sense it had. I mentioned just now, not very long ago, the matter of compradors and so. Okay, and there was a leading idea that caused a lot of problems in this country, which is the idea of Appanchat. Okay, you remember that? Everybody remembers that. Yeah?
Dragon invented.
He did invent it. I heard say that it was
a man named Debedin.
Debedin, I already said that. But you see, in that time, we talked about a little bit about ideas. Then at that time, because we're into socialism and whatnot. Okay, at that time, you find that this. I might get into problems with Pambalik Gerald over this.
You might get into the problem with who?
Gerald.
Gerald Powell? Speak your mind.
But, you know, those sort of ideas, I have a problem with the race and class. Okay? You see, in Europe, which was a white society, and the question of class after feudalism and the Industrial Revolution and the middle class and the working class and whatnot, you see. But in a multiracial society, what happens in the section of class? Guyana is not showing any class consciousness as far as I know. You know, they have Indian businessmen, they have very few, top businessmen, they have very few African businessmen, okay? But they're not a class. I don't know if you think they're a class. They're some sort of, they don't exist.
I heard you mentioned Forbes Burnham there.
Yeah.
And
Burnham was ideas.
Right. But we have current and we have a little past there with the Barjack deal now, Irfan Ali. Would you say they would measure up to Burnham in any way? What are your thoughts of these
Burnham
leaders?
was outstanding. I think so. As I said, in terms of leadership and the use of ideas to lead this country, he was top class.
But there was a dark side to him too.
Well,
the authoritarian side.
Yeah, but all them third world leaders are authoritarian. And you look at people, even Lee Kuan Yew, somebody was talking about that. He's authoritarian. You know what I mean? He's authoritarian.
But what would you say to the people who would criticize and say that he failed as a leader to bring this country together as one?
Who Forbes?
Yeah. Would you conclude? Would it be fair to make that conclusion?
I don't think he had Indian support, Tom.
What do you mean?
The Indians felt alienated.
No. Hold on.
Could you be a
successful?
But I wanted to ask a question. Could you be a successful leader, Freddie Kissoon, if you're not able to bring the people together? No, nobody could say that as a leader you could bring all people together. It's impossible.
But Lee Kuan Yew made Singapore a top class country.
Because he was dictatorial.
Look at his and Bono wasn't.
No, but you're talking about Lee Kuan Yew. Lee Kuan Yew was a dictator.
So was Bono.
Lock up people in themselves.
So was Bono.
But to come back to
what Jack doing there?
Come back to Irfan Ali. With what has happened and what we've seen in this country, would it be fair to say that he could measure up to Barnum in your thoughts?
Well, he's only in power for 2 years.
2 years. It's too
So you're
early.
prepared to give him a chance?
Yes, I'm prepared to give him
You're
a chance.
prepared, but
Yes,
that's coming.
yes, I'm prepared to give him a chance. Of course.
Leonard Gildarie, for the Tom Dalgety that I know, it's a heartening statement to hear from a leading black activist that he's prepared to give Dr.
Yes, of course.
Dr. Ali a
Of
chance.
course.
And I think that statement should be welcome by all African Guyanese, because Tom Dalgety is no ordinary African activist. You're talking about over 50 years. I've known this man over 50 years. I've went at 20 at the symposium in Bishop's High School. And I think it's commendable for a leading African activist to say, I'm prepared to give Ali a chance.
Of course.
But,
And I think I believe he has the intellect to do it, you know.
yes, he has a PhD from
I don't know
UW.
we get.
But one of the things I want to ask, I have never seen you publicly. I don't know if you've said it privately. I cannot comment. But I have never seen you make anti-Indian statements that I've seen many African rights activists make.
I see no reason for doing that sort of foolishness now. Anti-Indian statement. Let me say, I have been, me and my thing, all I do this music from Africa thing, you know. I've been very close to, one of my best friends is living for the rest of them are. Okay, I know my people say he digging out my eye and whatnot, not. But such a close friend is I haven't gotten, I'm telling you. So I don't
I know you've always been courteous to me.
Yeah.
All the
And
controversies with the last few years.
Yes, I'm telling you. So I have close Indian friends. And I tell you, I bought property from Indians. You know, to me, they didn't look at me and tell me so. And I've sold to Indians too. You know, I don't have a problem.
Well, let me tell you about an incident with him. Tom Dalgety, something else. On Channel 9, there was this announcement to boycott Indians. It was June in 1997. And,
That's the elections.
Channel 9 was...
Channel 9.
And I remember he told me, I met him the next day, he told me he was going to buy a car from an Indian man. Yeah, he told me that. He was going to buy a car from him. But I think you need people like Tom Dalgety to make these multiracial statements.
I was about to make the same point. When you have a man who's come out, went into the bauxite industry, started as an entrepreneur, and did so many things, made a lot of money in business and otherwise, involved in cultural stuff, was able to develop or pushing to develop his people in activism, through activism, and then you could be able to have an open mind and says, look, I believe Burnham is like this, but I also believe that Irfan Ali is doing a fair job. This is the kind of conversation that you need to have. We should open our minds and let's be fair. Let's be fair. What it is the reality, we have to accept that.
But Tom, have you got? Do you think there will be some encounters of a negative side with this that statement about Ali this evening? I mean to give him a chance. I don't have time for the foolishness of anti-Indian sentiments. Do you think in your socialization with African Guyanese after this evening you'll encounter any problems?
I doubt it.
And if it happens, how would you react?
I mean, for example, as I said, Omar Prasad is my best friend. He died a little. I'm with his son and so on. Okay, and therefore I don't have a problem with Indians. And most of my African friends know that I do have, you know, I do have Indian friends and so on and so forth. Yeah, I got on with them. You know, I don't have a problem.
There is no what is your relation with ACTA? Are you?
I'm out of ACTA. I've been out of ACTA since the incident with the films. And
you want to tell us of your incident?
since the incident where I brought in African films and everybody, at least the meetings I went to would support it, and Violet did not support it, but she controls the money.
And this is Violet Burnham.
No,
No, Violet Burnham. That's the head of actor, the current head of actor. But Tom, she's been the head of actor for more than 30 years.
Yes, they don't have elections and other things. These are people who hold on to this thing. The same thing is happening now with Ipadisi. They ain't got no. They will never. Since he changed the constitution or changed whatever it is, they will never. He will be there for the rest of his life.
Is it Alexander?
Yes.
They changed the constitution.
They changed whatever it is, the thing of it, and it's now a company. It wasn't a company. It changed it. He calls it a non-for-profit company, right? He'll be there for.
Well, is that in keeping? We have to examine that.
You see, so nobody comes up on merit. You see, it's got to be there for him all the time.
But isn't this a disservice to black people?
Well, why is it a disservice? There's a deeper question here, Freddie. If there is an obligation by the Guyana government to establish a pedagogy or something similar to that, based on what the UN, a decision that the UN took or a resolution, should it not have been an NGO? Why does it become a company?
I don't know. I see they're fighting. I myself I'm not out of it, but I've withdrawn.
That's a very strange model.
Yes, because he wants to hold on to power. Because he's going to be the head of the.
But nobody's objecting to these kind of things in terms of accountability, transparency.
But I know, knowing him,
I'm objecting to that foolishness. No.
And it's so that lady at actor's been around for donkey years, as we say in common parlance.
Yes.
No elections in the Apology, no elections in you know.
But let's give it.
But I think we need to tell our viewers though that Tom's son produces a very nice tea.
Yes.
I think it's called Caribbean.
No, it's called Dalgety teas.
Oh yeah, Dalgety
teas and herb.
I buy Dalgety.
It is fantastic. He has.
I buy your Sorrel tea. I buy your Sorrel tea.
So what we does that various.
It's in the supermarket.
It's in the supermarket. It's actually it began with Corella Bush, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yes. It began with us. And the Jamaicans call it Cersei, and the Jamaicans drink that tea at least once per week. You know, so we harvested. You see, in the cane fields, it's like a weed, you know, and the cane cutters will go in there and pull out the Corella bush, and we send it off. I have to dry it in Brent Street. In Brent Street, you put some train lights. You can't put it in the sun. Put it on your bottom house and dry it, and you put it in bags. And there, we use little hammer mills and grind it up, okay, and then you can get tea bags, okay, and make the tea bags and so on. So, but the market really began in England, although I sold some here in Guyana.
So you've been dabbling with a lot of stuff there, from making spotty to sodium silicate.
Oh yes, I made.
I like that.
I did some.
Truly, I mean,
yes.
Made some following you. I like
some
that.
teas also. I don't know.
Freddie Kissoon, it has been interesting talking to Mr. Tom Dalgety tonight. I've learned a lot, and I like his views. He's independent and he's forward thinking.
I wanted to mention something about when you all talk about snake and
a snake. I almost ate him up. Yeah.
Last week, I
when the car ran out, nobody stopped.
Myself and there's a youngster is by me right now. He's born in Ghana, but he spent a lot of life in the Caribbean. Okay, we were at Nabaclis Coca. I was at Nabaclis Coca looking for clay that is seawater clay and not freshwater clay, which is the clay I want to use to make the fire bricks. Okay, you get it up the quarantine where in front of all the sluices, the cocas, the sluices, and so on. And when I was checking for it on the East Coast, I was up in Golden Grove and the Backless and coming down, you know, we saw a snake. And when you mentioned snake, I wanted to say, only last week I saw a snake. And,
somebody took a picture of a snake. I don't know how true it is. A two-headed snake somewhere up in Africa back then.
I think we need to tell our viewers there's Dalgety tea. You know, I want to tell viewers that a local company is now making all kinds of peas in the tin. the Biharis, we always buy Del Monte peas, right? There's a whole variety of peas.
They're making peas.
Right. What we need to understand in this country is every time you buy a local cup of ice cream or a local pack of pasta,
you support that
people
business.
are being employed there to send their children to school. Buy Dalgety tea. I don't know why this foreign-minded thing. Tom, you knew we were in the 70s where black was beautiful.
Indeed.
You see advertisement today. All the images are of white people. People go, Tom, you go in the supermarket and see what people are buying. I want to know how those local pasta and ice cream people are making out.
We have to.
But Tom, the operator signaled to me that it's time. I asked Gildarie to just say a few words and then you will conclude.
Freddie, I just repeat what I just said there. I've said it from the beginning. You said 9 months, and it shocked me that we've been doing this thing for 9 months. But it's always good, and I've always said it, let us raise the conversation to the next level. We got to mature very quickly if we want to take this country forward. And we need people like Tom and the rest of the folks who could say, look, let us cross the divide, if there's such a thing as a divide in this country, and start having the kind of conversation that move all Guyanese, not Afro-Guyanese or Indo-Guyanese or Amerindians or Chinese or whoever it is. We have to move this country together. So thank you very much, Tom.
Yes.
Tom, you want to read it? This is Tom Dalgety, Guidelines and Chant of Rastafari. Guidelines and Chant of Rastafari. You want to read one? I like this one, number 50.
This is one, the chants.
Yeah.
Babylon, you're gone down. Mysteries of Babylon gone down. Babylon gone down. Babylon gone, and you don't throne fall down. Upon Jah mountain in Zion, Rastafari chant. Babylon gone down. Babylon gone down.
Let me see if I could do that.
Let me see if let me see if there is the creed, the Rastafari creed in here. I should have known that book. Right.
Okay, let me do this one.
Yeah.
Gildarie, you want to try your hand? These are Rastafarian chants. Babylon, you go. What's this? Babylon, you're gone down. Mystery Babylon gone. Babylon gone. Babylon gone. And your throne gone down. Upon Jah mountain in Zion, Rastafari chant. Babylon, you're gone. Babylon, you're gone down. You can't try that?
No. You guys have done very well.
You've done very well.
You've done very well. I think you even read better than David Aberdeen.
The books of Sacred Speeches of Africa.
You know why this photograph? Okay. I just took it because, there are two images of God, There's a male image of God, which is Jesus Christ, and the female image of God is Mary, right? So the reason why I chose this photograph is because this lady here is a Mama fighter. She actually fight in the Mama Wars in Kenya. I slept at her house for 2 nights in Kenya.
No, I left this for the last because I don't think, take a look at this book there.
Everybody should read that book. It's a fantastic book.
This book is by the author named Ras Dalgety, but he's in fact Guyanese, and his name was Thomas. He is one of the early pioneers of Pan-Africanism. So a Guyanese in the beginning of the 20th century was an early pioneer of Pan-Africanism. These Guyanese are everywhere and anywhere.
You know who attended the very first Pan-African conference in 1900? Fredericks. I tried it. If you go down High Street, I put up a placard about Fredericks. Fredericks was the founder of the Negro Progress Convention here in Guyana, and basically at about the time when Critchlow was into trade unionism, there was this cultural association called the African Negro Progress Convention. He actually attended, and there's a guy called Harper who attended also the famous 1945 conference. And the leaders of the 1945 conference, McConnell was the treasurer. Dr. Millard was the chairman. The joint secretaries were Kwame Nkrumah and George Padmore. The Kenyatta was the publicity man, let us say, okay? But in that 1945 conference, okay, the two leading figures were Guyanese. Okay? And we are going to hold another conference soon on the progress of that.
Thank you, Tom. I'm going to end on a note that will please you. I'm a Workmanville guy, so I know some of my Rastafari language. For our viewers, our time has come. We have to say see you later, catch you later, bye-bye, sayonara, arrivederci, au revoir. But the Rastafari, when they're saying goodbye, this is what they say. And I will say this to our guests, Tom Dalgety, Ras Tom Dalgety. Tom, in the more times.
In the more times.
In the more times.
Give thanks.